folks, welcome to this discussion on the Urban Company Challenge. This is problem number 83 in our weekend hackathon challenges. The last one that I did was on Niva Bupa and I by mistake called that 83. This is 83, the previous one was 82. In case you want to have a look at that discussion, you will find the link at the top right or left and then you can have a look at that and then come to this one. But coming to the Urban Company Challenge, and we have this format that we've kind of set in and I'll follow that. In case again you want to see the submissions directly, you can go to the end of the video. Right now I'll just give a little bit context, some of the important elements, and then come to the actual submissions and a commentary on that. Okay, let's start with why we've picked this challenge and the problem statement as we generally do. Now, as you may be aware, Urban Company has gone in for an IPO and it has had a stellar IPO. In fact, quite a big validation of the business model, and we felt this is a great time to just have a look at. We've never done a challenge on Urban Company before, so we said why not just focus on that product, and that's why we've picked Urban Company, right? Nothing more than that. No specific thing around the sector, but within that there is something interesting that is happening in the Insta Maids or Insta Help, as one would call it, segment of the market, right? So we had the quick commerce, and we wrote this in a newsletter called Mixology. I'll put the link to the newsletter also in the description. So what has happened is we had this wave of quick commerce that came through, right? And after quick commerce, now the next quick thing that one can think about, uh, unorganized and not very well structured, is maids, right? Most of urban families have maids coming to their houses, and they have a relationship that goes on for maybe several years, or if it's not working out, then one has to struggle to find the right maid every few months or every few days even, right? So this was one segment that is coming under disruption, and we thought, let's just have a look at that, right? Well, let's just have a look at that particular flow and see if there's something that can be improved. So IPO plus this new feature or new service, as one would call it, we said, yeah, let's pick up Urban Company. Now, before we come to Urban Company, the challenge or the specific problem statement, I would like to spend a couple of minutes on Urban Company, the design company, so to speak, the elements of design that this company brings about. Unlike, say, Niva Bupa or some of the other products that we pick, this is a true startup scaled by funding, and it's truly one of those companies which people aspire to as designers, or at least used to. I don't know if today that's the case, but at least say early 2000s, just post COVID, early 2020, post COVID, that era, people aspired to join Urban Company because they were truly disrupting something, right? Just like a Zomato or a Swiggy is doing or is known to do, they also fall into that league. And if you have a look at their blog, right, you'll get a sense of where this company is coming from in terms of design, right? They had a, again, I'm saying had because I don't know if that set of team members is still around, but they had a set of fantastic designers. That's pretty evident in terms of what they're focusing on, not just in terms of, this is their Medium page, by the way, in not just in terms of design, but also in terms of what they do in terms of culture as a design team. Now, one thing we've seen is that when a young designer wants to join a team and wants to grow, they need the environment and a group of people who can guide and mentor them, both in terms of just career but also design career. And I think Urban Company definitely had that. I'm not sure whether it has that or not, because of a lot of the updates that are coming from them are more business focused. And as he said, right, they've gone for an IPO, nothing wrong with that. Completely the normal trend that happens, that initially you have someone who's a disruptor, and then you have standardization, and then post standardization you have business. That is the number one thing that is focused. Anyway, so I'd like you to go and have a look at this. We'll put these links in the description. They also are one of the few Indian companies, so to speak, that in that time of design systems becoming popular, were the ones who created, and their design system is called Align. Now, in terms of this challenge, also it becomes important because there are a set of yes and no's that can happen. Interestingly, one of you commented in our discussion groups, does green form a part of the palette? While it does form a part of the palette, but in a very small way. I did mention that in the group, but you can check out this design system, right? And again, this too has been created in 2022. No updates, at least none that I saw from then, right? So once you create a design system, obviously you don't need to keep making new stuff, but you can imagine that in 3 to 4 years, nothing new in terms of design has or is likely to happen in the future, because it's a stable design, right? You don't need to keep changing, you need to make, say, minor updates, and that does form a context to this challenge, right? So it is not so much a challenge about so if you have, I will go to the problem statement. It's not so much a challenge about how more beautifully you can make the screen, right? That's not the problem with this screen, right? It is very well structured, the elements are well defined, the colors, everything, the palette well thought through, all of that is already done. In that construct, how can we do better is what the problem is about, right? And that means you need to understand the user problem far better than one would need to understand say other challenges whereby the design itself is lacking in some way. The design, okay, you can say the design is lacking in this sense because truly they've not understood or they've not put through the problem that the user faces. But as the UI design, let's call it that, the UI design is not the problem in this challenge, right? And when you the other point that I want to also discuss is, given this nature of a structured design system or a structured company that is now scaling after its initial testing, etc., etc., there is only so much that you can do when you're trying to build new features, right? You have a little leeway, but you cannot go absolutely from plain paper of scratch, absolute plain paper, clear canvas, do whatever you want. You have to follow a certain structure, right? What do I mean by that? So if you see the space that they have, right, there are certain elements that are repeatable patterns that you'll find across the urban company app, right? And it is almost a mandate that you need to have a repeatable pattern. In fact, I'll share one page that we are creating around Gen AI hackathons, and our base reference is our weekend hackathon page, because when we started weekend hackathons, now it's been I think 2+ years, we had a thought in mind and that thought stuck and it has worked out well. So we've not tinkered too much with it, because why do you want to change what is working fine? We might improve certain things, but what not drastically change. So the card structure, the style, the elements that go into it, a banner image, that stays, because from a development and user experience perspective also, when I say development, it is the internal one, and user experience is users are used to using your app in a certain way. Both of these elements you can't change too much. You can change it, but not too much. Hence, when you're building a new feature, you have to do it in the daire mein, is as one would call it in Hindi. Ek daire mein tumhe, you'll have to make things. You cannot go completely haywire and say, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to put a full page image or something like that. That's not possible. It will not fly internally, and definitely the user also, it may not fly, because they are also used to a certain design pattern. Now with that, it's a very very interesting segment in which we've taken the problem statement. As I mentioned, right, after the disruption that has happened in quick commerce, or grocery buying, if one wants to call it, it's been tried so often. But I think Blinkit and the likes, Blinkit, Zepto, Instamart, have kind of cracked things, right? And now they're just scaling like crazy. uh, this is another segment, right? So you had home services, which is like masseurs, etc., etc., those things. But this is totally different in terms of somebody who's visiting your house, whereas the masseurs, etc., do visit your house, but they spend certain amount of time then go away. But this feels more personal somehow, right? At least, I mean, our upbringing, 90s kids, 80s, 90s kids, and 2000 kids also, there's a maid that comes, regular maid that comes, does home cooking, cleaning, etc., etc., and then goes away. A bond and a relationship forms, unlike the other home services that are there, right? And this is the market that is now getting disrupted, largely because people no longer may need maids throughout the day. And obviously there's the security, etc., aspect. Maids may not be available, they may go away. So this is a very very interesting market. We covered this in our newsletter, as I mentioned. There are other companies which have raised money in this segment as well, called Snapbit and a couple of others, Pronto, I think. Do read about it, I'll share that link. But within that mold then, so there are two molds here. One is the design mold, that you have certain things only you can do, and the other is that this is a hot market. When I mean by hot market is, money will come in. Somebody will invest a private equity or whatever into this segment, because everybody now wants to get into it, because the first and the second movers obviously will capture the market very very quickly. But that has not yet happened. This feature was launched in I think 2025 March, and right now also I don't think it's live in every place, right? So domestic helps, what matters. Now what you see in the screen that they have right now is just time based, right? So you have 15 minutes. In 15 minutes you can get a maid to a place, or 10 minutes. I think Snapbit is 10 minutes. So that is what they're talking about. That is not really what is important. They say that the maid will do XYZ, 5 activities, falana, all of that. But what truly matters to a person is the experience that the maid has. Like, has she handled, or again, it's not right to say she have they handled managing the house. They know cooking, how well they cook. Do they have a reference? Those are the things that matter when somebody is trying to get a maid on board, at least in the long term, right? Short term, 15 minutes and maybe one day session, maybe it may not matter, but again, those elements don't suddenly go away. Unlike, say, food delivery or groceries, whereby you don't really much care who's doing it, as long as the thing or the element comes to your house. Here, it does matter. hygiene also matters, right? Religious sentiments, those matter. A lot of things. There are so many elements that come to it that just saying 15 minutes and just click a button and schedule, that kind of is not in the realm of how one would think of the user's problem, right? Uh, and the other thing, the hourly rate part, that also does not work out, right? So hourly rate, that does not in your head provide a construct in terms of how much you're going to need, right? Because I don't know. So it's also about efficiency, right? I don't know how efficient a certain maid is compared to another one, because you'll get a different maid every day. And I don't know, मतलब आधा घंटा लगता है, 1 घंटा लगता है, as one would call it, right? But to the maid it might be different, and then there is a chance of friction. But anyway, they're trying to solve a problem. It's obviously an unorganized market, hence there is obviously need to solve that problem, at least that's what they feel. But hourly rate, I think, is the least of consideration, and that is what is kind of pushed through, right? You have 1 hour, 1.5 hour, 2 hours. What then is a better way of looking at this problem? I think one thing, and Nishit was discussing, and even when I was also thinking about it, one thing that does matter is what all can the maid do well. Proficiency, right? Some maids do cooking very well, some are very good at cleaning the house, different aspects of it, right? Something you're very good at, something you're average at, something you can just do passable. Just as we have with language proficiency, it's very, very similar to that, right? That is one aspect. Second is, I myself don't know how to estimate in terms of hours. So one element is, how big is your house? Like how many vessels, how much food, how many people? These are the levers basis which one could, think about the problem. But they've not, right? I'm pretty sure when they did the research for this, like, we're going to launch the service, I'm 100% sure these elements came through. But they purposely did not, because very likely that this feature was just a test bed. That's what I meant by launching new features. It is a very high chance that they would launch the feature, and if it did not work, it did not scale, in 6 months or 8 months, they would shut it down. So why spend the time in complicating for the supply? By supply, I mean the maids who are there, that they have to understand when they're choosing a service, that okay, these many rooms are there, this, etc. They said, okay, let's keep it simple. Let's keep the business metric as the user metric, which I think is unfortunate, right? And which is why it leads to a design problem as such. The screen in itself has nothing which tells you what is it that you need to tell the maid in terms of what the work is. You can only ask for time-based thing, right? So that is in essence the problem, and how to one could think about solving the problem. Now, coming to how people have actually solved it, I think you guys have done a fantastic job, right? This was one of the few challenges where the submission count was not that high, but the quality of the submissions throughout was fantastic. I think we have sub 7 in terms of total honorable and winners. And I think you understood the problem, because maybe you've faced it in urban India. Most of you live there, and you know what one needs to do when getting a maid, right? Or at least you've seen it, or at least you've done research. But it came through and through the problem statement. Everybody understood that this is the problem, right? Which is amazing, right? A company as big as Urban Company, which is gone for an IPO, are we saying that they do not know about it? No, that's not the case. Again, I'm giving you the context because they likely know that this is the thing, but they don't want to solve it today. Maybe 1 year down the line, or 8 months or 9 months, whenever they take a relook at the business metrics, etc., they'll say, okay, does it make sense to go deeper and solve it with training for the maids? Right now, the maids might be trained at a basic level and done in terms of verification. Those elements might be more important. Later, these elements might matter, and maybe segmentation, that you're a cook, you're a house cleaner, whatever, etc., might happen, right? So you need to understand that Urban Company is not at fault, so to speak. But as a designer, if you were at Urban Company or any such company which is launching a feature, it doesn't take too much, given that you have a standardized design system, to push a little more, and then convert. That is one part of my key takeaway. Convert the user problem or the user lingo into the business metric. So the metric is not going to change. It's going to be hours or minutes or whatever, right? How much unit that is going to get measured. Like even when a designer is hired, right? You have an hourly rate, you have number of screens. These are the classifiers, right? Now one has to convert the user's problem, that I have to build out an app, or I have to redesign something, or I have to create that has to be converted into this. That could have been done by the design that you guys created, and most of you have done that, right? So without further ado, let's go into the actual winners and honorable mentions. And again, kudos to each one of you. I think fantastic work all across. What we focused on, uh, some of the key evaluation parameters, is whether you understood what the problem was and whether you could solve it properly. And I think all of you have done that. Second, I don't know if you mentioned it, is how do you best utilize the space that is available to capture the user problem, but at the same time not make it too complicated. We've not said this even in the evaluation parameters. I don't think we said this, but you can ask 50,000 questions and still not get the answer, right? without asking too many questions, how do you convert that user lingo into the business lingo, right? So convert, say, house size, etc., what things you want the person to do into an hourly, and do it within one screen, because they've done it in one screen, right? So that is the thing. Whoever's done that well and with good quality, anyway, the design, I don't think anybody's done a bad job of it. So that was the most important thing. If somebody's been able to do that without making it too complicated, right? So let's start. The first one is Archit Jain. I think great work. I think just couple of things that I liked and did not like. Did not like me. Couple of things that I did like. I think the only submission, that's why he makes it here, is that he has something around AI in terms of enabling the user to answer a form. Essentially, this is a form, right? I mean, when you think about it, form filling obviously people don't like. So if you ask 5 questions, they're going to obviously have cognitive load and give up. So maybe AI can help, describe your house and etc. etc. I think that's a good thought. How that gets implemented is a bigger question. Again, this is a one screen challenge. Would be great if you guys can actually make it into larger problem statement and a larger case studies for your portfolios, and try to see if this AI thing can be solved with this thing can be solved with AI, right? But anyway, it's pretty simple, straightforward. One thing that I kind of, why he's only in the honorables, is because the consistency of the design, as you can see, right? One is large, one is small, these elements, and you have 1 hour here but you don't have. So how do you come to know what is the amount of time needed for stove top and hood? Is that too? So you're hiding certain information when it need not be done. On selection, if it gets shown, then why not show it first up? So minor things, but I think overall, kind of addresses the problem. Definitely better than what urban company is doing. Space utilization could have been a slightly better than what it is right now. Then comes to, so one element. So this is Tanya. I think what Tanya has done is expanded the screen. We request you guys not to do that. When we give one fold, as in one screen scroll, keep it that much, because everybody's trying to solve around that problem, right? Anyway, we gave a little leeway because I think she's done a good job in terms of understanding the problem. The design could be slightly better. The weights of the border, the color that has been used here, the purple could have been slightly lighter. But I like this, the scale, so to speak, whereby you could, move the. I believe you can move this to decide how much time you need. It will give an estimate, but you can move that as well and say, 2 is not enough. I need 2.5 hours or 3 hours. Well done, from Tanya. The other, so this actually is from Praniti, and Praniti, I think I'm right. I think Praniti was one of the winners of, or was the runner-up. I think runner-up or winner of the Niva Bupa challenge. And I think Praniti, you can work on a design a little bit more in terms of making it more subtle, right? As I told you, this problem statement is not about the design of urban company being wrong. It is about what elements they show, right? So you could refer, as I showed you, they have a design system, pick elements from there. Right now, what you've done definitely solves the problem. I think yours was, in our consideration, for most of the part, the number one submission, because it takes care of everything, but it gets a little cluttered largely because of the design, right? And in this case, as a designer, you can improve your skill sets to make this less cluttered. You can actually take, and others can also take this as a problem statement for yourself. How do I make this look less cluttered, make it a little bit more subtle? You can do that with, say, grays, the colors that you're using, the even for example, a very simple thing, right? The checkbox that you're using, the background that you're giving to that, right? The rounded edges that you're, very small UI elements, but that kind of starts differentiating you from other designers who are just getting into it. And a good reference again is a design system. These guys already have one. Refer to what they have done, because a lot of thought already has gone into that, right? So that's from Praniti. I think this was the number one submission because it takes care of everything, right? But in terms of design quality, I think others have done a better job. So we did not consider her for the winners. This one was great. Only thing is that in terms of design, also very nicely done. All the elements are in place. Nice little nudge here at the top, and nice way to highlight it. A subscription is why I chose this one. Design wise good, solves the problem great, but only person who's actually talked about having it as a subscription service. I think that's a fantastic thought, and I think that is exactly how this service will play out, right? If you remember, Milk Basket and even BB Now and all of those have subscriptions. This is not too different from that, but again, how that works in the background is a different thing. But good thought, putting it, and it is in the same real estate that the others have done that, right? So that's kudos to you. I think in this case, the estimate on number of hours, we are assuming. So most of the people have written estimated or recommended, or have given a slider or something that says that based on these inputs, this is the amount expected. In this case, it's not apparent. So maybe here you recommended or something could have helped, right? I'm assuming that when you toggle this, these values change, but that is, you're leaving it to the person to discover. I mean, you have to play around to do it. Others have done that without having to. And let me tell you one thing, the power of defaults is amazing. Most people will not even try and toggle. They'll see if it works out, fine, I'll go ahead. others they'll give up, right? So if you're saying there's an estimate, then mention the estimate part here. The other thing is this element here, scheduling, is not needed on the screen. So if you check out the actual flow on the app, at least the one that I have seen, the scheduling happens afterwards, not on the screen. So why waste time and energy trying to design that or even add that here, because it's not part of the flow. This was from Yuvraj. Nice work, Yuvraj. And then is Hema Ganesh. Clean design, very looks like urban company. Maybe a little bit more subtlety could have been brought in. One interesting element that she's done is the language part. So one more thing, okay, all these honorable mentions, right, they're almost on the same stage because in terms of the tag that we've given, honorable mention, but some are better than the others, right, as you might be evident to you, but it's not ordered in that way. So I'm not saying Hema Ganesh would have been number 3 if we had a third. That's not how it is ordered, just to make it clear. Anyway, so picking the services, that's good. I think what I liked is this, right? Some more nuance in terms of language and in terms of age. Both matter, right? Some people need maids who are experienced, right? Some people who need maids who are young. That means energetic. They will not fuss over, doing things or picking heavy objects, etc. Language matters a lot, especially locality based. Like if you're living in a particular locality and you need a different kind of maid, absolutely good thought process. Nobody else has thought about it, but the way you've created the design part of it, definitely refer to the design system that they already have. I think you can solve this, and even some standardized design systems, right? You don't need to even just refer Align or Urban Companies one. You can refer any other one. Don't use generic ones and just place them. That's what has happened in some of the submissions. But okay, slightly we can give that. Again, I'm stressing on the design part largely because the design is not the problem with Urban Company. So when you're trying to solve the problem, don't break the design, right? And if you can do that, I think you will 80% of the problem is solved because you've understood the problem, all of you guys. Okay. And now coming to the honorable mentions or runner-up and winners. So Janelle, I think, has done a fantastic job. Only the reason why Janelle, and I think in terms of the quality of the design, and I think Praniti, Hema, all of you guys can look at this submission. When I say subtle design, using grays, rounded edges, elements, you can look at Janelle's submission. You can see certain things very clearly when you're looking at the screen, and then you have to spend a little bit more time to see the other elements. So for example, you can see these bold elements very easily, right? And then you can see the 4 rooms one. Now if you wanted, you could have had the same font color, you could have the same size, but there's a way to create that hierarchy of how the eye should look at things and whether it should look at things or not. It is a skill that is learned over a period of time, and definitely you can look at the winners submission, some of the past other winners also, and you'll see this same pattern. Anyway, why did Janelle not become the winner? So for Janelle, again, see, you can see the recommended tag for the others who didn't put it, is largely because this real estate, why have you wasted? I have no idea. Because the original banner, right? Originally there is a banner that they have placed here. That's a pretty decent banner, nothing wrong, nothing that needs to be fixed in that. So why remove it? Because the space you've kept the same, right? So that banner could have fit here. Or you could have some other banner. This white space, maybe you like cleaner design, but this white space seems a little bit of a waste. The page looks a little dead, largely because you're coming from the home screen, right? You also need to know where this page is coming from. Directly from the home screen, if you come here, it looks like an empty page. It looks like an incomplete kind of a flow, right? Especially because all the other pages do have a banner, if I'm not mistaken, right? So retain that pattern. A banner would have most likely made you a winner, is what I feel. But the winner for this challenge is Nirmal. And again, as I said, most of you have solved the problem. He's done exactly those elements. The R's, rates, etc. The elements are there. What is covered, what is not covered. Only thing that Nirmal, again, I mean, one point to you also, look at the design system that Urban Company has. These colors may or may not be part of it, but that's a small thing for this challenge. You've solved the problem well, and it doesn't look too cluttered. Like a lot of people have solved the problem, but the screen tends to become a little cluttered. I think Nirmal, you've done a fantastic job. Likewise, I mean, Janelle has also done a great job. So congratulations to both of you as well as the other folks that have submitted. Okay, now let's come to the last part, which is the key takeaways. And I think I've kind of mentioned this, but I'll restate it. So when a new feature is launched, right, and you can see in Urban Company, you could see with I think when long back when Swiggy launched Swiggy Pop, it stayed around for a longer time. Other companies also did that, and companies who have large scale, right, they have like 40-50 people in the design team, a development team, etc. etc. Large scale companies, it's better, and you have a defined design system, it's better to launch a feature, test it out, get data, and then go level 2, right? Especially when you have a dependency on supply, as opposed to making a Taj Mahal and then launching it, right? So that is one thing that as a designer you can take from this, that it is more important to ship a feature, and that might not resonate with you in terms of design. You would want 15 things to be created and ideal flow for a user based on the user research. but that does not happen. So you need to respect the business in that sense. But at the same time, that does not mean you need to compromise. As you can see in these screens, they were not too difficult to design, right? Within 1 weekend, people have done that. In fact, you don't need too much time once you know what you want to solve. So as a designer, when you're in this atmosphere, in this environment, be it a startup or a large company, and you have speed that is needed to ship something, you can be the voice of the user in that room and say, it'll take another 15-20 minutes or another day to show a better quality design, right? With the design system elements that already exist, right? So for example, in this case, the need was to convert users lingo to the business use case. So business use case kya hai ki ours is the metric, right? We have to show ours. Everything is ours. So most likely what has happened is that they said, okay, just show ours and people will select and go. But that is not what people understand, right? So a lot of you guys have gone through that journey and converted that lingo of rooms, activities, skill sets, etc., into hours. One can do that, right? And with your design, you can do that. So these were the two key takeaways. Nothing rocket science in this case. I think the Niva Bupa ones were more in detail. But here, I would say when you're shipping new features, respect the design system that is there if it already exists. Don't try to create something too great because most likely it may get killed. So urban company, for example, may in 3 months just shut this feature. So it's a waste of time to create new elements for a new feature. Use elements that you have and try to, even in that construct, solve the user's problem as much as possible, even if there is a push from business to do it quickly. That's it from my side for this discussion. I hope you enjoyed it, and congratulations once again to the winners. Do share, like, and subscribe this channel, and share it with folks who aren't aware of UXHack and what we are doing in terms of weekend hackathons. I'll see you next time. There are a lot of pending challenges, so to speak. I think Apple was the next one that we'll put out, and I'll see you soon. Okay, bye. Thanks.